Yeah.
Hi, welcome to the show. Today we have Laurelei Black. She's an author of 11 books, I believe it is now.
Yeah, 11.
11 books. Um, the founder of the American folklore witchcraft tradition.
Yes.
Um, frequent participant and part of the organization of the Babalon Rising Festival. And just there's just so many qualifications that we'll get into this as we go. We'll get to know you a bit better. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and you're going to be participating. You're going to actually do two lectures at the Second International Left Hand Path Conference that's coming up later this month. Actually, it's in less than 2 weeks, July 25th to 27th. Hi, welcome to the
Yeah.
show. Today we have Lorelei Black. Sorry about that.
Was exciting.
um, so yeah, you'll be presenting two lectures at that convention. So we can talk about that a little bit later too. But first, I'd like if you could introduce yourself a little bit about your background and how you found yourself in the path that you are on now and what that path is.
Yeah, absolutely. I got involved with paganism, magic, witchcraft back in the late 90s. I guess it was around 97, I think. I was living in Bloomington, Indiana at the time. I was just finishing out my bachelor's degree. And I got involved with things like the CUPS group, the Unitarian Universalist Pagans. And um, there was actually a really large OTO influence at our local CUPS group, which was
Okay.
kind of awesome in the sense that they had really in-depth esoteric magical conversations. It was, and I had sense to sort of sit back and shut up and listen because I knew that I was a baby witch. I really didn't know anything. Um, and then I left the area and I moved to Los Angeles, where I met the high priestess of a coven that had just formed, and my coven brothers and sisters out there. And I joined up with them pretty early on. And they are a witchcraft trad that's based on Robert Cochrane's writings. I'm not sure. Most people, when they think of contemporary witchcraft, they think of the Gardnerian path and sort of the offshoots of that. But Robert Cochrane was sort of writing in opposition to Gardner at the time, and he was basically saying this is not what traditional witchcraft looks like. And so I got involved with really a more traditional craft based on more fam trad practices and that kind of thing. But my high priestess had a particular view on things that it shouldn't just be based on British traditional practices because, I mean, let's face it, we're not Brits. So our practice looked a lot more American um, in a lot of ways. A lot of the spirits that we worked with were from here, not from, half a globe away. Um, and so I studied there for several years. I lived there for about 5 years, and then I moved back to Indiana. Um, and eventually started my own coven in that tradition, and then later sort of hived off. My high priestess and I had a falling out, as happens sometimes. But when I met my now wife, Natalie, she and I actually, I wooed her by dropping the name Robert Cochrane because there just are not that many witches in Indiana that are practicing a Cochranian style of craft. So when I said, oh, I know who he is, she was instantly smitten, and we've been doing magic together ever since. She and our other partner, Joe, were founding members of the Babalon Rising Festival. That's actually how I met them. I was a presenter. I came presenting about Aphrodite. And my involvement with Aphrodite is all tangled into this witchcraft business. It's all sort of part and parcel of the same gig. But I came out to present about Aphrodite, and I sort of met both of them separately. and there was flirting happening with both of them, although it took us about a month to figure out that we were sort of all connected. And then I just got really heavily involved with the Babalon Rising Festival. I've been coordinating that since I've been helping to coordinate that since 2009. I help run particularly the Scarlet track, which is the Sacred Sexuality and Sex Magic segment of events, and just sort of general festival administration. So I do a lot of the paperworky things for running the event. I'm a second degree initiate in the OTO at this point. And gosh, I feel like there's so much more that I could go into, but that's probably enough.
Yeah, that's definitely quite a bit. Now, what did the concept of Babylon from the as Crowley sees it, did that influence the whole Babalon Rising Festival at all?
Absolutely, yeah. Crowley's vision of Babylon is definitely part of the festival. Although for us, I think for most of the people that come to the event, you know, we're drawing on a lot of different sources. So, like for instance, this year we have a ritual every year on Saturday night called the Feast of the Beast. It's sort of the big culminating ritual for the event. And this year we actually drew really heavily from Jack Parsons' vision of Babylon. And,
oh, very cool.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome, actually. We had one of our longtime festival attendees played the role of Jack Parsons, invoking Babylon into the priestess, and it was just sort of, it was amazing. But so I think a lot of us have really a sort of an evolving vision of Babylon. She's not something static that somebody wrote about and then we do what they said, particularly, you know, it's sort of how she's manifesting. We have an ongoing conversation about Babylon every year and how she looks and feels for us.
Oh, that is very cool. I'm a huge fan of Jack Parsons myself, so I'm really into that kind of thing. It's really interesting how that Babylon itself becomes like this archetype that various different people have written about, and it's really cool that you're celebrating that diversity.
Yeah, we've, you know, she's become, the Feast of the Beast ritual really did sort of, used to be more focused on both Babylon and the Beast, and in the last couple of years, Babylon herself has taken a really strong lead in that. I suppose it's because we named the festival Babalon Rising. You know, that magic is working, that magic is playing out.
Awesome. So now I know that Jack Parsons wrote about what he called the witchcraft. And do any of his ideas regarding that influence what you're practicing?
You know, not directly necessarily. They might be trickling in, but I'm going to have to embarrass myself now and say that I probably haven't read as much Parsons as I should have.
Okay.
By this point in my occult career. So it would be interesting because it may actually be that we're doing things that are very, very similar to that. But I couldn't say right now.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I'm really interested to hear about is, I know this is one of the things that you're going to talk about at the conference, but maybe you could give us just a little taste of the Kane, Lucifer, Azazel archetype and how that fits into your traditional witchcraft and folklore practice.
Okay, absolutely. I'm just gonna flip some notes to make sure that I cover the things that I wanted to cover.
Oh, yes.
You know, I first got introduced to sort of the concept of kane, tubal kane, when I first joined my witchcraft tradition in California. Tubal kane, which is how we always referred to him, was the central deity of that tradition. And the Cochrane-based witchcraft groups sort of around the world do tend to work with tubal kane, either calling him tubalo or tubal kane or just kane.
Okay, I saw the name Tubal. What was it again? Tubalco?
Tubalo.
Tubalo. Okay, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I heard that before, but I didn't realize that it was connected to Tubal Cain.
Yeah, yeah, it is actually, and there's a really good book about sort of the roots of where my witchcraft practices start by a woman named Anne Finnan, who wrote about Tubal. I think the title of the book was Tubal Cain's Forge, or the Forge of Tubal Cain. The Forge of Tubal Cain. So, so for a lot of us that are practicing this particular style of witchcraft, Tubal Cain's been there right from the beginning, and I was actually sort of really lucky in the sense that I never really started with Gardnerian practices. That version of Wicca was never part of my practice, so I've never really been Wiccan. I've always been a witch, but Tubal Cain's been right at the heart of that for me, right from the start. And it wasn't until I started reading, like I mentioned, Anne Finnan's book, The Forge of Tubal Cain, that I saw some of where my high priestess had drawn the roots of what our coven was, and also books by like Shawnee Oates, who's out in England. She wrote Tubalo's Green Fire, which is another really enlightening book about Tubal Cain and also about sort of that influence on the witchcraft tradition. So
What
for
was that
me,
author's name again?
her name is Shawnee Oates. It's Shani and then Oates.
Okay, thanks.
So Natalie and I have spent a lot of time talking about Tubal Cain and calling on Tubal Cain, you know, doing ritual invocation and possession, doing channeling work. We are really big fans of the talking board, so we do a lot of work on the Ouija board, and he comes through a lot for us. And part of what we've gotten from him, you know, sometimes he sort of takes a direct hand and goes, "This is what you need to know right now." And sometimes it's more that we make connections as we're talking to each other and go, "Oh my gosh, of course, that fits so perfectly." You know, it's like little pieces are locking into place. And part of what has really come out for us, both through work on the board and then through the channeled writing that we did last summer, actually right about this time last summer, which resulted in the book Liber Cain, is that Lucifer is more of a title, and Azazel is more of a title. Lucifer meaning light bearer, but it's not a little less of a name than it is sort of an office. Then the same thing for Azazel, of course, meaning roughly scapegoat of God. That's sort of more of a function or a duty, you know, a role. And so Cain or Tubal Cain are the names that we really use to refer to him. But when we're in saying that, we're really talking about this sort of this bringer of enlightenment, this bringer of magic and alchemy and witchcraft and all of these things to mankind.
Cool. Now, is that connected with the folkloric tradition that Lucifer, as the serpent in Eden, seduced Eve, and that the whole tree of knowledge thing was kind of a metaphor for intercourse, and that Cain was the product of that, and that the product, and then she went and gave Adam the knowledge, knew Adam in the biblical sense, and then
Right.
had two children, one Cain and one Abel. Are you connecting with that whole concept? Because then you have Tubal Cain as one of the, I think it's the 8th generation after Cain.
Yeah, and essentially what happened for us as we started to really delve into that, and I guess, of course, with all of this, we're talking about myths and that sort of thing, so it's a little hard when you're getting into historical veracity and this kind of thing. But I think maybe more than anything for my own witchcraft practice, and I know for Natalie's and sort of the American folkloric style of witchcraft, a little less concerned with history than I am with myth and poetry. I feel like mythopoesis really speaks to the human psyche in a way that, you know, So I'm not, I don't know exactly how it all played out, except I know what came through us as we were writing, which is largely that the gnosis that we've had is that Lilith called Azazel as the serpent to free her child, to bring freedom and enlightenment to her child Eve.
Cool.
And that Eve then tried to take that back with limited success. But that was there, and that Kane, and then later Tubal Cain especially, were the embodiments of that energy among mankind.
So what is the benefit of working with this what some may call a luciferian current?
Wow. For us it really is. I mean, it comes back to sort of knowing yourself, knowing, seeing the energy that's available and that's present. I think really, you go back to the name Lucifer and to this concept. I really feel like there's a lot there about enlightenment. And of course, I'm very attracted to the white goddess side of things, where there is this sort of this light of gnosis. I think the thing that we're really trying to understand is ourselves and our place in the universe. That I feel like the thing that comes out for people as they do this work is really a very true knowledge of self. And that can get sort of very grandiose and, very deified. I mean, I feel like that's a lot of what comes to the fore is that our place in the universe is not necessarily a small place. That we're, I don't know, I'm struggling for words, but that that we have, I feel like there's a sense of purpose, that we have a place, and that we're sort of the masters of our own universe, and that's not always an easy thing to come to terms with. And I feel like that's what Lucifer does. It sort of helps shed that light, and help you see clearly.
Excellent. Now, I know that there is a connection because you are a priestess of Aphrodite, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I am.
So now there's a connection with the morning star there. Did you want to let our audience in on that?
Yeah, well, you know how that's played out for me, or the sort of the gnosis that we've had in our group? Because, so Lucifer is called the morning star, and Aphrodite is also very much Aphrodite, Venus, Ishtar, all these ladies of love. These white goddesses are very much associated with the morning star as well, the morning and the evening star. And I personally feel like that has, that there's a connection is there sort of to lead the way for us to understand the relationship between that lady of magic and enchantment, that lady of illusion and illumination, and how she's very intimately connected to Lucifer, Cain, the bringer of enlightenment. They're bound together a lot throughout mythology. The smith god, this god of alchemy and magic, and the love goddess. We see in Greek mythology that plays out as Hephaestus and Aphrodite. And I feel like in Greek mythology they do a lot to really suppress your understanding of that, because of course she's always shunning Hephaestus and making fun of him. But I don't think that would be the case at all. I think that she would absolutely see him for what he was. And that, it makes good sense too when you think about the fact that the materials that the forge smith works with, that the forge god handles, that become steel and become the fine jewelry in terms of gold and that kind of thing. All of those ores came from the stars, so this starry lady, this starry goddess of love is very literally the muse or the fodder for the forge.
Very cool. And so Hephaestus definitely would be coming in line with the whole Lucifer Kane, Tubal Kane connection, because as we see in for the ancient tradition says that Tubal Cain was one of the first artificer of metals, right?
Yes.
And so that connects him with the forge, and therefore Vulcan and Hephaestus. Well, Vulcan would be the Roman name, and Hephaestus, as you said, is the Greek.
Well, and I've seen people make, and I don't know how valid this linguistic connection is, but I've seen people make the linguistic connection between the name Tubal Cain and Vulcan. And again, I have no idea if that's valid in a linguistic sense or not, but it's certainly interesting and food for thought that Tubal Cain sort of gets almost hyphenated down to Vulcan. So the links are there.
Yeah, and oh, there was another connection that I had there, but oh, no, it's gone.
It'll come back.
Okay, so now, no, it's gone. I guess we can move on then. Now, what is the other subject that you'll be talking about at the conference?
I'll be talking about sort of the title of the workshop, and this is the one that's happening on Friday at noon, I think, is Siren, Succubus, and Seductress, the Bride of the Devil, or the Devil's Bride.
Right.
And in that, I really am talking about the white goddess and sort of these dark aspects of the white goddess, and the fact that the way she plays out, or the way that the relationship plays out, sort of between these sort of white goddesses, these ladies of love and enchantment, and really is one often of marriage between her and him, you know, between the white goddess and the red god. But part of what we'll be discovering or exploring is how the images of the siren and the succubus and sort of these witchy seductresses that we see throughout mythology and even to a certain part in contemporary practice, though I think a lot of people sort of shun that as lesser than. But this idea of seduction as a powerful component in witchcraft, and one that coming very much from these sort of central archetypes of the mythos.
Oh, that's really interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to that one. Now, does that the white goddess getting married to the red god, does that connect with the Persephone mythology and even further back to the Ishtar descent into the underworld?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, man, those Greeks. I love Greek mythology, and obviously I've really adopted, you know, sort of Aphrodite as the face of the white goddess that I work with. But I really feel like the Greeks made it hard for people to, like, you really had to chew through some myths to find some of the truth that's under there. And with Persephone, I see Persephone more as the sort of the dark goddess of the underworld, you know, the lady of death, the lady of hiding and of concealing. And there's a lot that gets concealed within her realm. And what we don't see in Greek myth ever is Aphrodite coming down into the underworld to confront her dark side, her dark half. However, Aphrodite's emissaries do. So she sends Psyche in her place to go down there. And yeah, I absolutely think, certainly when you look back at Ereshkigal and Inanna, that's absolutely a very good playing out. And I think one of the things that ends up happening for people, I know it's happened for me, is that you start seeing that the white goddess and the black goddess are not so much different archetypes as they are two sides of the same archetype. You know, there's dark within the light, and there's light within the dark. You can't have a shadow that's not cast by some source of light. And even in the darkest naturally occurring spaces, there's still usually little pinpricks of light somewhere. There's some sort of light within that darkness. So we have life and death within life as well. And yeah. Sorry, I started rambling.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Well, that leads directly into what I was going to address next, and that is your choice to participate in a conference that has left-hand path as part of the whole defining theme behind it. Can you
Yeah.
discuss your connection with that and why you decided to be part of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like um, it got, you know what, the conference got brought up to me, I think, largely at first because of my involvement with Babalon Rising, which does sort of push a lot of boundaries of magic. We've got all kinds of folks that come out. There's a large OTO contingent, but there's also, you know, we have several luciferians and, you know, different versions of Satanism that get represented at the festival, and all sorts of things like that. And as I started looking at the lineup that was happening back when I volunteered, which was pretty early in the process, I saw, you know, Michael W. Ford and Luciferianism, and I thought, my cousin's Luciferian. That's not necessarily the term that we use for it, but I definitely get behind the concept of this, you know, this light bringer into the world, this you know, this person that brings illumination and freedom of the soul to any who are willing to reach out and take it. It's a scary thing, and I think that's one of the reasons why he's been so reviled by history. That's why he's a scapegoat, right? Because it's no easy thing to do that, and I think people fear freedom more than they embrace it. I feel like we give ourselves ways to trap ourselves and to constrain ourselves. And so I think that it was partially that. And it was also partially that I feel like I feel like any witch that's working sort of what I would think of as a true path of witchcraft acknowledges that there is both a dark and a light. Um, I've heard the path of traditional craft referred to as the gray path. You know, it's neither black nor white, but it's walking the line between both. You know, you dip into whichever side you need. You know, and in terms of left hand and right hand, I have both. You know, and they often work together in cooperation on the same, you know, and on the same projects. There are times when that left hand is the one that's really needed. That it's the most expedient, you know, efficient way of getting what needs to be gotten. I feel like there's a lot of unnecessary fear with the term left-hand path, and I'm hoping in my own small way to help alleviate some of that, or at least to show that it's not quite what you think it is. I'm not saying that it can't be what you think it is, but that's, you know, but it's not all dark. It's dark and light.
Yeah, and that's something that I've actually been saying a lot lately. That really, personally, when I say left-hand path, I really mean more like the complete path. Because a lot of times I see people that are practicing what we would traditionally or typically refer to as a right-hand path. A lot of times they explicitly will say that they do not work with any dark forces whatsoever. They do not investigate that aspect. What they stay very clear away from it, and they're just purely light workers and that kind of thing. It's very, very common within the right hand path. But the left hand path, I find that we work with both the light and the dark. And Luciferianism in particular, like people who work with the light bringer or the morning star and the evening star, these types of concepts are very light in a lot of ways, but they also do allow you to confront your fears and learn from them and get into some areas that may be very disturbing, but being able to work through them will help you understand yourself a lot better and the world around you, and so on and so forth. Shadow work, essentially.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the shadow work is really important. I feel like, you know, it's great and wonderful to say that a person only works with the light. I wonder how much that's true for them. You know, I wonder if there's not some amount of diluting of the self that's happening. Because if you are only working within the light, then when do you confront your own monsters? You know, at what point are you being burned up by the light? You know, are you, you know, at what point do you take that break, sort of from blindingness? You know, the light can be a painful place in its own right. You know, if we think about things that are, you know, I talk a lot about Aphrodite as a starry goddess. And one of the things that I'm really recognizing within that is, you know, a star is beautiful and twinkling and this lovely little shimmering aspect of light off in the distance. When you're up close to it, it's a burning inferno of rage. and I think that that's something that people don't necessarily always take into account, that the light has to be tempered with the darkness. I think that's my experience, at least. Maybe I'm making proclaimments for everybody, but I feel like we have to do that shadow work, or we're going to stagnate. You know, if somebody is truly only going to work the right-hand path, they're only going to work. For one thing, they're going to go around in circles to the right. You know, there's some amount of straightening back out and walking that middle ground, or you know, that just has to happen. I feel like that balance needs to be there, even if it's a matter of I'm going to the right for this really long time and now I'm going to turn, you know, and work more in a left-hand method. But I feel like there has to be sort of some give and take between those.
Yeah, I definitely agree, for sure. Now, what can you tell us some of the projects that you are working on right now? Or do you have any books upcoming?
I do have some books upcoming, actually, and I'm sort of I tend to work on like 3 projects at once and then release them all at the same time. A couple of the things that I'm working on are very Aphrodite specific. I know I'm working on a book right now. I've had a lot of people requesting training from me regarding sacred sexuality, and it's actually really hard for me to accommodate that in a lot of ways because sometimes it requires actually being there in person. And so one of the things that I'm working on is sort of a sacred courtesan's handbook, or sort of a training regiment that a person could go through if they wanted to sort of self-lead through the process. I'm finding more and more people that are called to that work and that are interested in what I, as a priestess of Aphrodite specifically, might have to say about it. So, so that's one of the projects.
Okay, that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. It's very titillating work. It's very exciting.
Well, it
part
sounds
of what
like
I'm doing is
you've explored a lot and you've done a lot of research in a lot of different areas with.
Yeah, and I certainly have, and there's it's been really interesting because one of the things that I've been doing here in the last couple of months is actually reaching out to other people who have done this work and what it's looked like for them, what they would have wanted in resources had they been available, and that kind of thing. So so that should turn out. I feel like that's going to be a useful addition, you know, to the corpus of magical writing. I'm also working on, and I'm not sure yet if this is going to be in a book format or not, but I'm working with another priestess of Aphrodite out in California on some training materials for those that are feeling called to serving Aphrodite specifically, you know, to working with Aphrodite either as a devotee or as a priest or priestess. And I think we're going to be offering online classes for that coming up in the fall.
Oh, very cool.
So yeah, so that's another. But I've also got I've got a fiction book that is in the works. One of the books that I've written in the past was called Temple of Love, and it was a fiction novel based on the life of Sappho, or sort of the imagined life of Sappho, the Greek poet, as a priestess of Aphrodite. So right now what I'm working on actually is the story of Helen and Clytemnestra, the twin Spartan princesses who were sort of at the heart of the Trojan War. and the relationship that I believe that they and their family had with Aphrodite and her sort of patronage or protection that she had over that household, that family line. And then Natalie and I are also working on, and we've been working on this for a while, so I'm not sure when it's coming out, but we've been working on a book that's actually about our witchcraft tradition, the American folkloric witchcraft tradition.
Oh, great.
So that we'll be working on that in the coming year. I know. I'm not sure when that'll be done exactly, but it is a project.
Oh, that's excellent. Now I know that another project that you started a while back, and I was really interested in this, is the Aphrodite Temple that you're working to build up. I think that's an amazing project where you're creating an actual place for people that can come and have a beautiful space to kind of worship or meditate upon Aphrodite and all the various different things related to that.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that particular project, and it's one that I think we started collecting donations a year ago, and I'll be making a bigger push on that soon because I now actually have the space for that to happen. Some of my friends and I went in together and bought a piece of land at festival grounds in southern Indiana. And we have, retreats and festival events, that type of thing, throughout the year. And there are little nooks and crannies all over the land, and there's one that's particularly calling to me as a place to establish that temple. And it's, that's a project that's very near and dear to my heart. I'm looking forward to getting started on it in real earnest. I think we should be able to start some of the building on that here in the fall, even.
Yeah, I'll add a link to the video description here for you, because I think that's pretty amazing stuff. There are too few places of worship or places of spirituality for that aren't mainstream religions out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, there really aren't that many. There are a few in the western part of the United States that I know of, but for somebody living on the East Coast or in the Midwest like I do, those are just really difficult to get to. I think the Parthenon, which I know is not necessarily intended to be an actual functioning temple, but it's certainly been a place of pilgrimage for a lot of people throughout the Midwest. There's the Parthenon there in Nashville, Tennessee. Got a very impressive 40-foot tall statue of Athena, all in gold.
So very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so so I wanted to let everybody know that's listening that if you want to go to the International Left Hand Path Conference that's happening later this month, the 25th to the 27th, you got to get your tickets now because there are a few tickets left, but there may not be any tickets available at the door. So I would definitely encourage anybody who wants to go to get those tickets as soon as possible, because as I said, there's a very limited number of them. We're getting very close to the day, and I definitely want to make sure that if you're gonna regret if you don't get the ticket and try and get the tickets and then not be able to get in.
There's quite a lineup of speakers. I'm very excited about everybody that's going to be there.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible the people that are going to be speaking here. A lot of people that have written several books on some really interesting subjects, including yourself. I'm very interested in meeting all of you. Definitely would be great when we get to meet in person.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so I want to thank you again for agreeing to be on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it was a great conversation that we had today, and I wish you the best in all the projects that you have going. It sounds like you have some amazing projects happening, and I wish you the greatest success in all of them.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, yeah, again, thank you for being on the show, and we'll see you at the conference.
Sounds great. I look forward to it.
Bye.